So I recognize some of you. It's great to see new faces. I'm occasionally there throughout the semesters to talk about nutrition or something in the nutrition world going on. Today we're going to talk about your GI tract, gut health. It's one of my favorite topics, nutrition. And like pretty much every time I come, I say this has a lot of influence in social media, in marketing. There's a lot of things you hear out there that are talking or spoken about as fact, but are really not. So hopefully we can get into the nitty gritty of that, and try to help guide your search for better overall wellness without all those screaming ads and marketing things going on. At any point, if you have a question or comment, chime right in. When I ask questions, they're not rhetorical. I love input. And I am in no sense a techy person, but I had a little bit of time to get into Canva, and I am going to apologize in advance. I got a little excited about graphics. Like usual, any good nutrition or organ cartoon is like right up my alley. So this happy large intestine is on the front of me. So I'm Stacia. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also an intuitive eating counselor. I started in community health at WIC, and went to clinical for several years before I had kids. Now I have my own business where I do a lot more intuitive eating, but I also love the opportunity to talk to people. So I'm excited to be here. And at the end, hopefully, I have lots of time after, even if we run close, which I tend to do because I get really excited about this topic. But please come up and ask questions. And I have my email at the end too, if you would like to follow up. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some basic anatomy and of your GI tract, how to improve your GI health or maintain if you're feeling good, and why the health of our gut microbiome is so important and its connection to mental health, amongst other areas of wellness in our body. For a long time, we thought, science world thought your GI tract is just your GI tract, but there's really been amazing studies about how it can have implications on heart health, on brain health, mental health. It's really fascinating. So some basic terms that get thrown around that you have probably heard here today. Digestive health is really the condition or the health of anything from mouth to anus. That's your GI tract. Gut health primarily refers to your intestinal health. So when we say gut, a lot of people mean small intestine, large intestine, but it's a broad, not specific term. Somebody might be referring to their stomach or really anywhere kind of in that lower GI tract. Gut microbiome. So your microbiome, I'll try to say gut microbiome, but if I say microbiome, I am referring just to your gut microbiome. Of course, we have other areas of bacteria in our body. The gut microbiome mainly resides in our large intestine, and it's made up of good and bad bacteria. Okay, so your GI tract. And this is like a flowery artsy picture of the GI tract. There are a couple anatomical discrepancies, but for the most part, it works. So at our mouth, really when we swallow into the food into the esophagus is where your GI tract starts. So you have the esophagus and it opens up into your stomach. The stomach empties into the small intestine. The small intestine opens to the large intestine, and then we excrete the leftovers. Digestion, where does digestion start? Yeah, in your mouth. So we actually have enzymes, amylase being the most prominent in our saliva that starts to break down food. And then we have physical digestion with the mastication and chewing up of our food. So oral health doesn't get spoken about a lot when we talk about GI health, but it's really where it starts, right? Oral health, mouth care is so important. The most common and basic recommendation that I can give to improve someone's GI health in an instant is, are you eating too fast and are you chewing it? Right? You would be amazed at how much discomfort that can give you in a meal. Everyone's like, okay, I'm chewing. How much discomfort that can give you, right? Our stomach isn't made for whole parts of foods, but in this busy life that we live, everyone's here or there studying and eating, listening and eating, working and eating, socializing and eating. Even we tend to rush and not chew our food as much, which can really help. So digestion occurs, even food moving through your esophagus helps to digest it. It's a muscle, and it has this contract and relax action that helps move the bolus of food down into your stomach. And then stomach is really that center point, that pot of digestion, the acidity in your stomach and the enzymes that come in. A lot of enzymes from your pancreas come in to help break that down, break food down. And then what's one thing that can be absorbed if they're in the stomach though? So most of your food, which we'll get to, it's not surprising, is absorbed in your intestine, mainly your large intestine. But in the stomach, there's one thing that we start to absorb. Alcohol. So that's one of the only nutrients that starts to be absorbed. And that's why a lot of times you feel the effects quickly from alcohol, because it starts to get actually absorbed. And then processed in the liver. So after food is mixed in the stomach and it empties into the small intestine, it's called chyme. Basically, it's just like the food particles that are left. This sounds delicious. It's a great lunch presentation. So why is the small intestine called the small intestine? Right? Everybody knows it, it's actually longer, right? It's much longer. It's just more narrow. So the small intestine, I mean, again, this is like not super dense, but the small intestine is depicted in the center area, feet of intestine, more narrow, like intestine. That then gets emptied into the cecum, which is the first part of the large intestine, and it goes ascending, transverse, descending, and then forward. How many sphincters does the GI tract have? Sphincter, you want me to go over a sphincter? So different transition points have sphincter. So I'll give one to you. Esophagus into the stomach has sphincter. And so gastric reflux is kind of like not a defect of that sphincter, but can damage that sphincter because sphincters shouldn't allow backflow, right? So when you're having acid reflux or even vomiting, right, that sphincter is somewhat dysfunctional or even damaged from the acid, from the acidity. So there's seven sphincters. Our upper esophagus, lower esophagus are both stopping points or transition points. The bottom of the stomach, pyloric sphincter, which goes into the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, goes through your small intestine, the ileocecal sphincter, which is the last, so small intestine, large intestine, and then the internal and external anal sphincter. That's six though. So there's a tricky additional one called the sphincter of Oddi. This is a great trivia question. Does anybody know what the sphincter of Oddi is? Which I love. I think it sounds like Greek mythology. I had to add it. It's the sphincter from your pancreas to your small intestine, so that transports bile, other hormones and enzymes into your small intestine to help that digestion and absorption. Did I say gallbladder? I meant pancreas. Pancreas. Sorry, my apologies. Pancreas. I was looking. That bright yellow blob is, I think, it's representing what they want to represent as the gallbladder. But this is your pancreas. Right there, that lower part, and then out the bigger part. This is your stomach, and that's your liver. So absorption occurs in the large intestine, and that's where your gut microbiome is. So they're all interconnecting in that function. What is a non-nutritive? What's something that doesn't provide nutrients that's absorbed in the large intestine? Water. Right, so our large intestine is hugely responsible for water absorption. Okay, so what is a microbiome? Really a collection of bacteria, right? We're going to talk about good versus bad bacteria a little bit. How many strands of bacteria do we have in our gut microbiome? So a strand would be like E. coli. Right, that's on a bad list. And then another strand, if you have probiotics or maybe a Greek yogurt, it might say, added, this type of strand added. So those long names, right? About 100 different strands so far. I mean, they're discovering this is all really kind of prominent on the forefront of nutrition research, our gut microbiome. So they occasionally find new things going on out there. How many total bacteria do we have on average? 100 trillion in just our gut microbiome. So good bacteria is so helpful. We don't often give a round of applause for bacteria, but we should. Thank you. They are instrumental in digesting and absorbing nutrients, vitamins, amino acids, short chain fatty acids, and they have a huge role in our immune system. And there's so many. The names are kind of obsolete. There's a lot. Certain strands of bad bacteria can cause acute illness, coli, C. diff, salmonella, all of those. Others can just cause, in general, poor health. You don't feel well, you have that kind of thing, you have colitis, right? So it's like a blanket term that you kind of go to the doctor. It's like, well, I don't feel good. I have this, I have diarrhea, I have an upset stomach. And they kind of say, okay, you have colitis. It's that inflammation of your intestinal tract. A lot of times that's bad bacteria. You maybe have an imbalance, too many bad bacteria, not enough good bacteria. And it won't cause the profuse, terrible C. diff or other, really more extreme reactions, but definitely not going to feel well. Okay. So like we talked about before in the last slide, the functions are mainly to help digest food. A lot of times more like carbohydrates, certain sugars, and fermentation of food. Immune function, so there's links between poor GI health, poor gut microbiome health, and your immune function, heart health, and mental health, which we've talked about briefly. So sometimes when you hear a presentation with all these bad things, it's easy to forget about what we can look for in everyday life, right? There are some simple things and that can tell us our gut microbiome is doing fairly well. So overall well-being, you're not going to the doctor for GI issues all the time. You're not running to the bathroom after a meal. It's not a life disruptor, right? And so for some people it is. Their GI health can be a big life disruptor. So overall well-being, regular bowel function, and absence of gastric reaction. Gastric reaction just being like, I mean, everybody knows you have that meal and after, like, just bubbling, bloating, going to the bathroom, not feeling well. So what is regular bowel function? That one's slightly rhetorical. There's not an exact answer for that, right? That's more individual. Regular can mean you're going with ease, right? Not struggle, you're not constipated. But there's no true set amount of times, frequency that means you're regular. A lot of times we think one time a day at the same time of day, every day is regular. Some people, that's not true. Some people are regular at every other day. Some people are regular having a bowel function multiple times a day. That can be your regular. So I really debated on this next slide, but I think it's important because a lot of times we don't see it. And I will warn you, it is a poop chart. It is a stool chart. But a lot of times we keep our GI issues to ourselves because we think it's embarrassing. In reality, I mean, maybe it's gonna have toddlers. And so I'm warning you, for those of you who are eating, if you have a small thing, it's all cartoon. I should have said that in the beginning. So this is actually a really well known in the medical field. It's the Bristol stool chart. You use this, you can show patients, you can compare. It's actually a medical tool. And so I think the overall gist that I want you to see is that type 3 and 4 are normal, right? But there are a lot of other types. So it can just, I want it to spark a light in you. And okay, maybe I really am not having that many GI issues. Or okay, maybe I need more fiber, more water, right? That top of the list. The more pellet-like, very hard. You can do something easily about that, right? More water, look at your fiber intake, increasing fruits and vegetables. Some of the ones towards the bottom are more medically challenging. Inflammation, so type 6 inflammation, you could just have more bad bacteria than you need, but it could be a sign of colitis. It could be a sign of IBD, IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. And then type 7 is more when we have that disease state, maybe a stomach bug, a food poisoning, right? You can see that. Now we don't have to look at it again. But a lot of times we can go through into our adulthood without ever really thinking about that. Some of you are thinking, thank God. But I think it's helpful. In a teaching aspect, it's helpful with children too. We don't often talk to kids about this is what your poop should look like. This is what your bowel movement should look like. And it can be helpful. Okay. My friend is asking, so what can I do for my gut microbiome? There are a lot of really simple, applicable things you can do without going to a doctor, without buying anything off the shelf, that will help your good bacteria to flourish, literally. So eating a balanced diet, that's always on there, right? If you lack green vegetables, that runs you at a risk for a disproportional amount of bacteria in your stomach, in your intestines, sorry. If you are avoiding carbohydrates, right, that is going to probably decrease your overall fiber intake, some vitamins and minerals. It might imbalance if you're having too much soluble or insoluble bacteria. Are insoluble versus soluble fiber, and cause some GI changes. Stress is a huge one. Stress has it can play a vital role in GI health. There are people who have that stress reaction, right? That upsets their stomach. And so it's easy to say work on your stress, but really learning mechanisms to lower your stress in situations to have lower incidence of GI reactions. And that can be meditating, walking, therapy, counseling for anxiety and stress. Avoid unnecessary antibiotics. And I don't love how I wrote that because antibiotics are super helpful. I'm not trying to be antibiotic. And I think healthcare in general has done a really good job over the last 5 or 10 years of slowing down the overprescription of antibiotics. So when your doctor says you need one, I think you should listen to your doctor. However, it's also very important to finish your course, right? Everybody says that, but why? Why is it important to finish your course of antibiotics?
build resistance.
Yeah, so you're getting more of the antibiotic to treat the infection or the bacteria. But if you don't, the bacteria can grow back again, and then you'll need another course. So if you're not going to finish those 2 days, your infection can remain and grow, and then you might need another 10 days. And that's where avoiding unnecessary antibiotics comes into play, right? If you just finish your course, you're most likely to need less antibiotics. Regular exercise is good for your GI tract, and it helps you keep you regular, right? That is a gastric motility tool is exercise, aerobic exercise, movement. Sleep, cessation of smoking. Smoking affects blood flow and can affect blood flow to your intestines, which will affect your digestion absorption rates. Probiotics, and by that I mean food sources, hopefully, which we'll talk about in another slide. There are a lot of foods that have probiotics. But if you take probiotics, what else do you need to be? What else do you need to add? Prebiotics, which we'll talk about, right? Prebiotics are necessary for probiotics to work. Oh, I had that as the next one. It wasn't even tricky, sorry. Okay, the do's and don'ts of gut health products and practices around GI health. Yeah, okay. So we're going to mainly focus on probiotics and probiotic supplements, fiber supplements, and detoxes and cleanses. All of which are very common and pushed upon in the nutrition world. Okay, so prebiotic. What is a probiotic? It's a bacteria. It's bacteria. Yeah. So it's a live organism that we ingest that then can help our intestines and our gut microbiome. And probiotics we refer to a lot of times as good bacteria. Like that slide before that had good versus bad. And it's found in a lot of dairy products and fermented products. Yogurt, mostly Greek yogurt, has a higher incidence of probiotics. Kefir, tempeh, which is actually just a fermented food, which I have next. Fermented soy, and then fermented foods like kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, pickles. And who doesn't love a good excuse to eat more pickles? So those all contain probiotic foods and are an easy way to naturally get probiotics into your diet. Prebiotics are the food that probiotics uses to grow, to eat, and generally the bacteria actually eat the prebiotics. And so how silly is it that not a lot of us know that we need to take those? So if you're taking a probiotic, but your diet lacks in prebiotic foods, your probiotic isn't going to make it. It's not going to survive, and it's not going to have the benefit that you want it to. So it also aids in calcium absorption and blood glucose control. Prebiotics are often resistant or non-digestible starches, carbohydrates. My list is partially covered up, but it's fruits and vegetables. Apples, artichokes, asparagus, beans, wheat, barley, cherry root, dandelions. You want to eat those? You don't have to, I mean, that's really just that list. Oh, perfect. Great, thank you. Flaxseed, which is a seed that is really common. You can like put it over your oatmeal, have it ground or have it whole. It's in granola. It's little tiny seeds. Tomatoes, soybeans. Tomatoes is so random to me. I haven't looked into that because that's not really it's like which one of these doesn't fit type of things. To me, the tomato really stands out. But as you can see, if you have a very diet, right, you're going to be consuming those things. Bananas is the big one. Did I miss that one? It's not on there. So bananas is a prebiotic food, or has prebiotics in it, and yogurt is a probiotic. So a great snack is a Greek yogurt and a banana, right? Or a granola that has oats in it, has flaxseed in it. on your yogurt. A salad could include a lot of those things, right? It's simple, easy stuff that we don't think of. Okay, so my questions, my little reminders I have are, who should consult a doctor before taking probiotics? And that might be a trick question, because part of me wants to say everyone, right? And you should chat with your doctor, especially if you have a good relationship with your doctor, about the practicality of taking them. But I think what I more was looking for was who should be careful before taking them, right? So who wouldn't want to put more bacteria into their GI tract? Okay, someone with who has an inflammatory disease like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, small bacteria overgrowth syndrome. You don't want to add fuel to the fire there. However, if your doctor has that in your treatment plan, there's obviously a reason for that. But those are some instances where adding bacteria or adding prebiotics, right? You're would be adding food to bacteria wouldn't be a great idea. And my buyer beware warnings are, there are a lot of studies that show the probiotics in a probiotic pill aren't really what they advertise, right? The strands aren't there, the amount isn't there, or they're dead and they're not able to be revived and work in your GI tract. So working with a greater variety in your diet is really the way to go. However, there are certain instances where they'd be helpful. For example, in a hospital setting, they can test to see what probiotics you're lacking, what bacteria strands you're lacking, and then prescribe a probiotic that has that strand. So that raises the question too, is you might be taking, I always think of Culturelle, and I don't mean poorly on Culturelle, but your body might not even need the strands that Culturelle provides. So just a more diverse profile in your dietary intake can be much more beneficial. Fiber. You love fiber. I want you to love fiber. Okay. So fiber comes from carbohydrates, and some fiber is soluble, which means it absorbs water and bulks up your stool, and some fiber is insoluble, so it can't absorb water, but it helps with transit time. You really don't have to worry about what type of fiber you're getting as long as you're eating a variety of foods, right? If the only vegetable you eat is cucumbers, and the only fruit you eat is apples, you might find that you struggle maybe with constipation and need to diversify your fruits and vegetables intake. Any questions with that? Your fiber intake should be between 25 to 35 grams, unless your doctor prescribed or tells you other ways. There's certain conditions like diverticulosis, which is the pockets in your intestines, where you want a higher amount of fiber when you're feeling good. But when you have a flare-up of diverticulitis, the inflammation of those pockets, you want low fiber. So there are certain times where your physician or your person, if you see a dietitian, might recommend other amounts, but in a general population, this is men typically we're recommended to have more. So why would I not recommend you go out and increase your fiber intake from 10 grams to 35 grams in 1 day? It wouldn't be that funny. Really, either could happen, right? It can actually cause constipation because fiber needs water. So if you're increasing your fiber intake, you need to increase your fluid intake, preferably water intake, or else it can cause constipation. On the other hand, eating a lot of fiber in a day can also increase motility, right, in transit time. Huge benefits from fiber. We know it decreases your risk of colorectal cancers. It lowers your cholesterol because fiber is not as digestible and can help with the attachment and passage of cholesterol. It regulates blood glucose because it slows digestion in your stomach. So if you have a high fiber meal, the carbohydrates that can be digested are going to be more slowly broken down and absorbed into your bloodstream. So if you have a piece of Wonder Bread's fine. I don't hate Wonder Bread, but it's going to break down into glucose quickly because there's no fiber. It is an ultra processed white flour that gets broken down quickly. You have the glucose absorbed quickly into your bloodstream. If you have one of those bakery oaty nuts where like there's the oats and the nuts sitting on top, and in through the bread, that is going to be broken down slower in your stomach. High fiber. Fiber is hard. Fiber is the casing on the protein element of oats, of grain, right? So only grains have fiber. And so when you take, it's also dark, it's a dark color. So low fiber breads are lighter because it's whiter flour. And then higher fiber breads are typically darker. However, of course, we started dyeing them. So the color isn't always telling, but those heartier, nutty seedy breads slows glucose. And then increased satiety because it's staying in your stomach longer. Right? If it's digesting slower, it's going to sit heavier in your stomach and you're going to feel full longer. So I always recommend food first because that just helps you diversify the food you're eating in a greater way. And if you have to pick out other fiber foods. And so fiber snacks, we've all seen them or had them, Fiber One snacks, that brand, fiber cereals. However, they can be harsh on your stomach. It's a high concentration of fiber. Your body doesn't really have to do anything to break it down. And it can cause gastric upset more so than eating it incorporating it into your meals. Fiber supplements like Metamucil and things that you mix in are a great tool. However, my cautionary tale is you can train your body to be somewhat dependent on them. Right? Absolutely necessary for people who need them. If your doctor recommends that, it's so helpful. However, we should try other things first. That shouldn't be what we don't do. That's like kind of like the Band-Aid. Or the duct tape on the big leaky pot. Okay, what macronutrients do not provide fiber? What are the macronutrients? What was that?
Protein, carbon, fat.
Protein, carbon, fat was stuff. She's listened to all my presentations. Yeah, proteins, carbs, fat. So I hinted at it or told you in the beginning, carbohydrates provide fiber. So fat foods that are fat, butter, oils, they have no fiber, right? Meat has no fiber, no dietary fiber, right? We refer to some things as like the meat fibers, that's different. So when you're talking about increasing fiber into your diet, you need to look at fruits, veggies, grains. I am already running behind. Okay, detoxes and cleanses. I'll be brief, don't do it. And I have my somewhat sarcastic, but like we have an amazing body and our liver and our kidneys are so efficient at cleansing and detoxing our bodies. Commercial detoxes and cleanses are very harsh. They can lead to dehydration, to hypernatremia, so the loss of salt, the loss of electrolytes, more malnourished state if you're doing them for a long time. You don't have to go months and months without food to be malnourished. Like it could take a week or two to be malnourished clinically. And so the substitution of real food for fluids is not ever advised by, I would say, a reputable healthcare provider. So your liver, and I'll be brief because I want to get to a different slide, but it all filters, helps to break apart, filter, and excrete toxins and waste. And so someone who maybe has one kidney or poor kidney function has to be more careful about a lot of things that they put into their body, right? That could be that's a different topic. Okay, and my big question for a lot of things with nutrition, especially detoxes and cleanses, if there's no long-term benefit, what's the point? Right, and you can say, okay, well, my sister-in-law did a 2-week cleanse and she lost 10 pounds before our vacation, and so I'm going to do it. You know what she lost? Water, right? She lost water and probably some muscle. Right, we see in the crash diet, or which is like that fast, all in diet, yo-yo dieting, fad diets, all of those kind of things that are in the media. That's my train of thought, I apologize. We see that they have a muscle mass. They have a decrease in your lean muscle mass, which has negative outcomes in a lot of other ways. So, for example, someone who has dieted on and on throughout their life, you would think, oh, okay, well, they'll be thin. Well, probably not. That's another presentation. Not only do we see that rebound weight, but we see a lower percentage of lean muscle mass. That was a tangent. I apologize. Okay, mental health and gut microbiome. So my nice friend here is posing the question: did my anxiety cause my stomach ache, or did my stomach ache cause my anxiety? Right, and that can be a cyclical battle that some of us get into, and that can be a chicken and the egg kind of conversation. But what we're seeing is medical professionals recognizing the incidence of inflammation in our intestines and poor GI health status with increased mental health concerns like anxiety and depression. So one of those reasons is because inflammation can change the permeability and the texture's not the right word, permeability and structure of your intestine, which can lead to things like cytokines, other inflammatory particles leaking out and going into other parts of the body, which sounds scarier. So inflammation of the intestines can overall be linked to greater incidence of anxiety and depression. Your gut hormones and neurotransmitters can communicate with the brain. It can cause neuroplastic and neurochemical changes. So those cytokines in your brain can not only cause the chemical changes that might result in anxiety and depression, but can actually change the structure of your brain. High levels of blood cytokines increase the permeability of that blood-brain barrier, letting in those rogue molecules. And then pro-inflammatory cytokines can stimulate stress response in the hypothalamus. And there's actually some interesting research on dietary interventions and gut health interventions in patients with schizophrenia and autism. So overall, not only can it be frustrating, and I'd say frustrating to have ongoing GI concerns, it can actually lead to a more chronic condition, diagnosable condition of anxiety and depression. So these small changes that we talked about might seem silly, right? Chewing more, having some more fruits and vegetables, changing up the fruits and vegetables that you're having, but it's a link, right? You eat maybe a couple different vegetables in the week. You're including some different probiotics and prebiotics into your intestines, your gut microbiome, and the probiotics that are already there are happier and healthier, and you have a stronger immune system. You are getting sick less. You feel better because you're not running to the bathroom. You're not having bloating, and you can create this picture of happier overall well-being. So where to start? Awesome. Normally, I'm like wrapping up way too late. Okay. So one of the most simple things you can do is take a personal inventory, right? Sometimes we can normalize the discomfort or nagging GI symptoms, like, oh, everybody has this, right? Or all my friends have bloating. We talk about it at our friend's dinner, book club, right? We're like, oh, we can't eat that. Don't put garlic in it because of my GI thing. So actually taking account and maybe writing them down, your symptoms, your concerns can maybe pinpoint or clear up a picture for you. For example, in the afternoon at work, I always get a stomach ache. Okay. Well, what happens at work, right? Well, I pack my breakfast and eat it on my commute. I don't take a lunch break because I'm just too busy. So I'm sitting at my computer. I take phone calls. I do paperwork. I'm catching up on work and eating. So stress, right? Distraction, probably eating fast, probably not chewing enough. And then you have a meeting after lunch. That's maybe high stress, or a class, or you're worried about a student, and all that stress can accumulate, and then you have to start getting work. Well, what are some things you can do? Can you wake up 10 minutes early and eat breakfast, right? Can you take, it's hard to say I'm going to take an hour lunch break, right? I always work through my lunch, so I get it, but can you pause for 10 minutes, right? And that goes back to simple mindful practices, right? Like you're probably, your body and brain aren't even registering the flavors, the textures, the foods, the temperatures that you're eating when you're working and eating. So review eating practice patterns and norms. Make one small change at a time, which can be so futile, especially with GI health. You want to do it all at once. The best example for people running away and going over the top with changes, I think, is the recent FODMAP. Has anybody heard of FODMAP? Oh, okay. So FODMAP was this revolutionary approach to, it was really IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease, so Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And it had every letter, FODMAP, stood for a different group of foods. So like one group would be like melons and berries. One group would be like leeks and onions. And so it was set up more regimented, where you would eliminate one group. Right, but it kind of blew up for a little while on social media. Health influencers, nutritionists, and they say, "Oh, just do the FODMAP diet." No explanation. So people would go read it and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't eat any of these foods." So there was a mass amount of people who were trying to treat GI issues with removing huge groups of food, like all the fruits and vegetables, and I mean, oh, it didn't help me. Right, well, if you read the actual description of that diet, it's to eliminate for that one food group completely for at least 2 weeks. And then it's not over there. Then you have a quarter cup of a soft cooked food item in that group, and then watch for reactions. Okay, I didn't have any reactions. The next day, half a cup, right? No one was doing that. So my recommendation is always one thing at a time, especially for GI health, right? Because there's so many factors. So whether it be cutting a little bit of time out at lunchtime, right? We're like removing distraction, stress at mealtime. Maybe it's, okay, I'm going to, for 4 days, track how much fiber I have, and then I have a starting point, right? Just one step at a time. Consult with a trusted healthcare provider. Not everybody has a trusted healthcare provider. A lot of times GI symptoms get written off really quickly. Like, oh, okay, that's okay. And so having some sort of healthcare provider, whether that be Prime Care or Women's Health or whoever you're seeing, and really, saying these are my concerns. And celiac disease, for example, is one of the hardest to diagnose, because they will start with every single thing else and test it to knock it off the list before testing for celiac disease. And that is a common trend in GI health. And then finding a dietitian if you have lots of questions about foods and meals and what you're consuming. So thank you for coming and being here. I always have so much fun. This is my email if you want to follow up with questions or anything. And then I'm here for a little while too. Enjoy some lunch and love questions and talking. So feel free. Thank you. Yeah.